You know that this connection is not ordinary. You feel it every time you think about this person, every time you try to ignore it and fail. It's as if something greater is pushing you toward each other, as if escaping is impossible. You've tried to explain it, tried to put it into words, but nothing captures what happens between you. It's not just attraction, it's not just affection. It's something that binds you in a way that no one else ever has. This person knows you without you having to say a word. They read you in the details, understand your silence. And even when you try to hide, they feel when something is wrong. With them, you don't have to pretend, you don't have to be strong all the time. They see you beyond what you show, and you know that. How many times have you thought about giving up? How many times have you sworn you would move on? But something always happens. A memory, a song, a scent, a word, and suddenly everything comes rushing back, as if it had never gone away, as if it had never ended. Because deep down it never ended. You may drift apart, you may try to forget, you may pretend that none of this exists. But it won't help. There will always be something pulling you back together. Because it wasn't a casual encounter, it was something that was written before you even realized. And destiny doesn't make mistakes. You feel it, don't you? You feel it, don't you? That presence that never disappears, that connection that never fades. You can try to ignore it, convince yourself that it's all in your head, but something inside you knows it's not. Because no matter the time, the distance, the circumstances, this person remains there, occupying a space within you that no one else has ever filled. And do you know why? Because this isn't just any coincidence. You've met other people, you've lived other moments, but no connection has ever been this intense. No one else has had this kind of impact on you. And even when you try to move on, there's always an emptiness that nothing fills, as if something is incomplete, as if no matter how much life goes on, this person remains a fixed point within you. How many times have you tried to convince yourself that it was just a chapter, that soon this feeling would pass, that soon you would find someone new, and all of this would be left behind? But it hasn't passed. No matter how much you try to rationalize, this connection doesn't follow logic. It's still there, silent, sometimes latent, sometimes more discreet, but never non-existent. And the strangest part is that this person feels the same way. You might even think you're alone in this, that you're the only one carrying this weight. But you're not. Because this connection was never one-sided. It was never just about one person feeling something while the other goes on with their life as if nothing happened. You know this person feels too. You know that at some moment in the day, their thoughts also turn to you. It may be a quick memory, a sudden pang of nostalgia, a moment when everything stops, and they wonder, why do I still think about this? What you have goes beyond the obvious. It's not just history, it's not just the past, it's a mark. And marks like that don't disappear. They remain, shape, transform. Some people pass through our lives and leave memories. Others stay forever, even if they're no longer close by. And this person stayed. They may have followed a different path. They may be at another moment in life. They may even try to pretend they don't feel anything anymore, but, you feel it because when something is real, it doesn't just fade away. And what's the most ironic? You never really managed to forget completely, no matter how hard you tried. And if this connection survives everything, if it continues to exist, even after all this time, it's not because fate made a mistake. It's because it's not over yet. Have you ever stopped to think about that? Have you ever stopped to think about that? About how that person is still inside you, how this connection refuses to fade away. Because no matter how much life moves forward, no matter how many other stories you live, there's always that moment when everything stops and you feel it again. As if it were yesterday, as if it had never ended. And it's not just about missing someone. It's not just about memories. It's about feeling. You feel that presence even when they're not there. You notice the signs, the details, the coincidences that don't seem like mere coincidences. Sometimes, in the middle of the day, out of nowhere, that person's name pops up somewhere. A song starts playing. Someone mentions something that only you two would understand. And in that moment, no matter how much you try to convince yourself otherwise, you know, this connection has never been broken. But then, why are you still distant? Why has so much time passed? and you remain stuck in this uncertainty, in this feeling that never goes away but also never resolves? Is it fear? Is it pride? Or is it that deep down you both are waiting for a sign from each other? Because it wasn't just any story. It wasn't just another phase. It wasn't just another person. And you know that. The way you looked at each other, the way the silences spoke louder than words, the way everything seemed to fall into place effortlessly. You know that doesn't happen with just anyone. And if you feel all of this, what makes you think that this person feels differently? That for them, it was just a closed chapter. Do you really think someone can simply forget a feeling like that? That they can move on as if nothing ever happened? You've tried to do that, and you failed. What makes you believe it was different for them? Maybe they are waiting for something too. Maybe they are caught in the same dilemma, the same questions. Maybe they've already tried to move on, convinced themselves it was the right thing to do. But then, out of nowhere, that same wave of longing hits them, that same feeling that something is missing. What if destiny didn't make a mistake? What if all of this is happening because in some way you both still have something to experience together? Have you thought about that? That perhaps this cycle never closed because it wasn't meant to. How many times have you both tried to go separate ways? How many times did you pretend that you were okay, that you had already moved on? But deep down, you never really managed to let go completely. It was never a true goodbye. And now, what are you going to do with this? Are you going to keep pretending you don't feel anything? How much longer will you wait until you realize that certain connections are forever? That some people are simply part of you, no matter what happens? You know what you feel. You know what it means. The question is, how long will you ignore it? How long will you ignore it? How long will you pretend that this feeling doesn't consume you? You might try to distract your mind, fill your days with other things. You might even convince yourself for a few moments that this story is in the past. But then, that unexpected memory comes rushing back, that feeling that something remains incomplete, that voice inside you that keeps asking, what if? And what if all of this is still happening because it was never meant to end? What if this connection never faded because it simply can't be broken? Time has passed, circumstances have changed, you've taken different paths. But so what? Has that really changed what you feel? Has it truly wiped away the intensity of what existed? You know it hasn't. You feel it. Deep down where no one can see, where you don't even like to admit, that person still occupies a space that no one else has managed to fill, and it doesn't matter who has come through your life after them, because no connection has been the same. No other presence has had that kind of impact. You may have even tried to love again, you might have even felt affection for other people, but there has always been that silent comparison, that loud absence, that space no one has been able to fill. And why? Because that connection was never meant to be forgotten. You know this. You might try to fight against it. You might try to convince yourself that it's better to let it go, but the truth is, it was never a choice. You didn't choose to feel this way. You didn't choose that person. It just happened. And you might say you've moved on, that you've accepted it, that you've put it behind you. But if that were true, why do you still feel? Why, even after all this time, does that restlessness still exist within you? You can fool everyone around you. You might even fool yourself for a while. But your heart has never lied. And what if that person feels the same? What if they think of you in the most unexpected moments? What if they also feel that emptiness, that void that nothing can fill? Do you really think it was only you who got stuck in this? Because connections like this aren't one-sided. When two souls meet in this way, they recognize each other. They connect on a level that goes beyond what the eyes can see, beyond what the mind can understand. And that connection has never been broken. How many times have you tried to pull away? How many times have pride, fear, and circumstances put barriers between you? But there has always been something stronger. There has always been that invisible force that insisted on bringing you together again. You can keep pretending you don't feel anything. You can go on with your life as if none of this matters. But for how long? How long will you ignore what your heart already knows? Because deep down you already know the answer. You've always known. The only question is, what are you going to do about it now? What are you going to do about it now? Will you continue to ignore it, pretending that this connection is just a detail of the past? Or will you admit that no matter how hard you try to escape, that present still lives inside you, alive, pulsating, present in every silence that screams when no one is looking? Have you noticed that no matter how many times you try to start over, there's always a point where everything goes back to the same place? It doesn't matter how many distractions arise or how many new people come into your life, nothing compares to what you had, and you know this. You feel it. You carry it with you every day, even when you don't want to. Perhaps you've tried to convince yourself that it was just a moment, that it was all a phase, an intense experience that needed to be left behind. But if that were the case, why does it still hurt? Why does that feeling linger that something hasn't been resolved? Because it hasn't been resolved. Because this story was never truly finished. Because you never forgot, never moved on, never stopped feeling. And now, will you continue living in memories? Will you spend the rest of your life carrying this longing as a silent weight? Will you accept that this person who once made you feel so much is now just a ghost haunting you without warning? Or will you finally admit to yourself that some connections are not meant to be broken? Destiny has shown you this so many times. It has thrown you signs, brought unexpected memories, and made you stumble upon thoughts you didn't even know still existed. Yet you insist on pretending you don't see. Until when? Until when will you avoid looking within and acknowledging that this person never left your heart? Until when will you cling to fear, pride, and the illusion that time resolves everything? Time hasn't fixed anything. Time has only revealed that this connection is real. No matter how much life has moved on, no matter how much you've taken different paths, you two have never completely let go of each other. So, what's still holding you back? What is still keeping you trapped? What more do you need to realize that some stories don't simply end because the world says they should? You still feel, you still desire, you still hope, even if you won't admit it. And if you feel all of this, if this person still has that power over you, what are you waiting for to do something? Because the truth is this: either you do something now, or you will spend the rest of your life wondering how it could have been. And carrying that doubt can be more painful than any answer. Carrying that doubt can be even more agonizing than any answer. Because in the end, it's not time that heals. It's not distance that erases. It's not silence that resolves. It's the courage to face what you truly feel. It's the courage to admit that this connection was never ordinary. But how many times have you ignored this? How many times have you forced yourself to move on, to accept that certain stories just can't continue? How many times have you tried to believe it was better this way? That everything that happened was merely a chapter in your life that needed to be left behind? And yet here you are, still feeling, still remembering, still carrying this presence within you. Still wondering if that person feels the same, if they also lie awake at night trying to understand why this connection never truly fades away. Maybe you've convinced yourself that the best choice was to move on without looking back. Maybe you've created a routine that distracts you, keeps you busy, and makes it seem like that feeling no longer exists. But there's always that moment of the day when everything goes quiet, when you finally allow yourself to hear your own thoughts. And there it is. Present. Intact. As if it never left. Have you noticed how life keeps reminding you of them? How there's always something that brings that person back to your mind? No matter how much time passes, suddenly a detail, a word, a place, a scent, and boom. The memory hits you like a shock, as if time hadn't passed at all. You feel that tightness, that unexpected longing, that restlessness that's been with you for so long. This doesn't happen by chance. You might try to ignore it, you might rationalize, you might tell yourself it's all in your head. But is it really? Or deep down, do you already know that this story was never truly finished? You feel it. You've always felt it. And deep down, you know that this person feels it too. Because connections like this aren't one-sided. They manifest from both sides, even when neither has the courage to admit it, even when pride, fear, and circumstances put barriers in the way. But what if that person is waiting too? What if they're also experiencing that doubt, that restlessness, that disguised longing? Have you ever stopped to think that perhaps the only thing preventing you from reuniting is the silence? Maybe it's the fear of exposing yourself, of not knowing the answer, of discovering that the other has already moved on. But is it really worth living with that uncertainty? Is it worth spending your life carrying an unresolved feeling just because you were afraid to find out the truth? Have you ever thought that the worst regret might not be trying and failing, but never trying and spending the rest of your life wondering how it would have turned out? Time doesn't wait. Life keeps moving on. But what about you? Are you going to keep just existing, getting used to this absence, or are you going to decide to do something? Maybe it's time to stop running away, to stop pretending you've moved on, to stop convincing yourself that it's all in your head. Because if it were, it would have passed by now, it would have disappeared, you wouldn't still have this strength inside you. Fate has already given you all the signs. It has shown that certain connections can't be broken no matter what happens. You can keep ignoring it, you can go on with your life without looking back. But deep down, this story will always follow you. This person will always be a fixed point in your soul, so what are you going to do now? Will you continue pretending you don't feel? Will you wait for time to fix it for you? Or will you finally admit that this connection is still alive, still pulsating, still part of who you are? Because in the end, the choice has always been yours. You can keep carrying this nostalgia, this doubt, this weight inside you. Or for the first time, you can do something about it. Now tell me, have you ever experienced something like this? Have you ever tried to escape a connection that simply can't be broken? Have you ever felt that someone was still a part of you, even after so long? I want to hear your story. Share it here in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because this conversation is just getting started.